Angesom Gabrazgi is a child who suffers from hydrocephalus. Letai, Angesom's mother, says he was exposed to the condition due to lack of nutrition and inadequate medical follow-ups before birth to begin with. She says the condition with her son was one that she failed to understand at first before he was carried to the hospital for running out of air.
Although he didn't have any visible bump when he was born, he would constantly cry, and the doctors told me to constantly check on him for symptoms. After 24 hours of crying, his face turned yellow and he started running out of oxygen. At around 1 after midnight, he was sent to Ida Referral Hospital.
Dr. Abraha, a pediatrician in Ida Hospital, says this case, namely hydrocephalus, occurs when cerebrospinal fluid in the brain is either excessively produced or hampered in circulation and absorption. Explaining hydrocephalus may arise before or after birth, he says most children with the condition are exposed to it due to lack of folic acid.
Normally in our brain or inside the calvarium, we have the brain tissue, we have that we say brain. Then we have also normal clear fluid, which we call cerebrospinal fluid, and we or abbreviate it as CSF. And this fluid is produced in our body and well regulated with absorption. Either excessively produced or hampered in the circulation and absorption, the CSF or this cerebrospinal fluid accumulates excessively.
Although they came from the district of Tambin all the way to Ida Hospital, Ma'ala, for medical treatment of their child, leaving their other children behind, no medical supplies were available to them due to the siege-induced depletion of medical supplies.
I left my 2 other daughters at a relative's and went to Ida Hospital to get the baby treated for 2 months. The doctors then told me that his brain may also get filled with fluid and that it was treatable. However, the treatment can only be performed after other parts of his body are treated as well. I borrowed money to make him finish the treatment of the other parts of his body. Then they told me that the treatment for his brain required 20,000 birr, with a process which required inserting a tube into his body. But then the supply was nowhere to be found. I went to the hospital several times, but they told me that it wasn't available.
After all the efforts they've put in, medical supplies were still nowhere to be found. According to the doctors, the child had reached a state where he cannot be treated or healed.
As I went back and forth from our town to the hospital in Maqalla, I spent all the money I had in transportation. So I went to the district office to ask for help. They told me they would pay for the supply if it was available. Now he is 1 year and 2 months old and he hasn't gotten any treatment so far. But then I went to the hospital and asked, and they told me that the medical supply wasn't available and that he hasn't reached a state where he can be treated entirely.
And on this kid, as you saw, the head is too big, and mother described the measurement was 81. So likely this is a circumference measured from the front of the head and back of the head, and circumferentially. And this is likely a state of non-salvageable condition following delay in intervention. At normal circumstances in Ida Comprehensive Specialist Hospital, we had a service called insertion of tube from this intracranial or in brain area pocket of fluid to the abdominal cavity, which we call it ventriculoperitoneal shunting. At this time, we don't have the shunting tool, and we are not offering the service to clients. So this toddler by age is now in a state that can't be salvaged, and the brain cannot be amenable to surgeries at this time.
This was caused by her failure to attend her medical pregnancy follow-ups properly in fear of the war-inflicted terror and what might happen to her if she got out of the house at the time.
We were encircled by the enemy at the time, so I couldn't get out of my house and I couldn't attend my pregnancy follow-ups properly. I had lack of iron, but I couldn't get that because we couldn't walk and live freely at the moment.
Letainal says they have to sleep at a church and beg for food during daytimes in order to survive. On top of which, she says, it has become very hard for them as the child's condition requires feeding more than the usual amount. notes.
Due to his condition, he needs to be fed more, but I don't have anything to feed him. During daytimes, we bake here and we sleep at the church.
The doctor explains the international community has in many ways failed the lives who are desperately waiting to be saved, and he says countless will have to share the same fate as Angasum if the required medical supplies do not enter the region immediately.
So what can be done is basically is offering the supplies, rechanneling the communications, allowing unhindered humanitarian access to medicines. So this is the minimum thing I may request, but basically if they have remaining eyes to see, ears to hear, with basically I have lost hope of the support they would offer. I think the scenario we are passing through is, I think, the worst scenario we are through, and would they bring us change? I doubt they would.